Good evening, everybody. Our top stories. Robert Mueller indicting 12 Russian intelligence officers. He accuses them of hacking the Democratic National Committee and the servers of Hillary Clinton. He still finds no evidence of collusion with the Trump campaign, but he's hard at work, obviously. The president's top attorney saying again today it's time to wrap up the Russia witch hunt. We'll take up the significance of these developments with Chris Farrell of Judicial Watch. Also tonight, President Trump with a royal welcome in the United Kingdom, and the president firing back at the fake news media, worldwide fake news media this time, for reporting tales of conflict between the president, the Brits, and their prime minister.
I would say the highest level of special. Now, am I allowed to go higher than that? I'm not sure. But it's the highest level of special. They're very special people. It's a very special country.
Talking about, obviously, the special relationship between the United States and the UK. It turns out the president and Theresa May are getting along fabulously. We take up the president's visit, look ahead to his summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin and the Dean himself, Ed Rollins. And forget Russia. Russia may be coming, but the Chinese are here. Rhinos Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell eager to do the bidding of communist China when it comes to trade. The two attacking the president's trade policies just days after China called upon U.S. companies to lobby against tariffs that would save, they said, American jobs and, oh yes, maintain the flow of money into their pockets. Our top story tonight, a dozen Russian operatives indicted by Robert Mueller, accusing them of hacking Democrats and interfering with the 2016 election. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein announcing those charges just days before the president is set to sit down and talk with Russian President Putin in Helsinki. Fox News Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge has the latest for us.
Lou, this 29-page indictment from the Russia Special Counsel makes a direct connection between the 2016 election interference and President Vladimir Putin.
The Deputy Attorney General made the announcement at Maine Justice.
The indictment charges 12 Russian officers by name for conspiring to interfere with the 2016 presidential election.
During the 2016 campaign, the defendants, all members of Russian intelligence known as the GRU, are accused of hacking Democrats' emails, then releasing them, as well as targeting companies that supply voter software. In some cases masquerading as U.S. citizens, the Russian operatives flooded the web with emails from the Clinton campaign, DNC, and DCCC.
The conspirators created fictitious online personas, including DC Leaks and Guccifer 2.0. The defendants falsely claimed that DC Leaks was a group of American hackers and that Guccifer 2.0 was a lone Romanian hacker.
The indictment says Guccifer 2.0 got a request for stolen documents from a candidate for the U.S. Congress who wanted records about his opponent. While not drawing a direct connection, the indictment states that hackers for the first time targeted a company used by Clinton's personal office on or about the same day candidate Trump said this.
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing.
In a statement, a White House spokesperson emphasized there is no allegation Americans knew they were corresponding with Russians. No allegation any American citizen committed a crime, and no allegation that the conspiracy changed the vote count. On Capitol Hill, the reaction was swift.
This is the appropriate supervised scope. Whether you are Republican or Democrat, conservative or liberal, we should be concerned about cybersecurity, whether they breach a system that has to do with the DNC or DCCC, or if it's a Republican network.
It tells us what we already know. Russia hacked, Russia spread false news, Russia was trying to help Trump win the presidency. But it provides the additional details that make it even more difficult for Putin to deny it.
Lawmakers commended Special Counsel Robert Mueller for the indictments, providing more granularity on the theft and release of political emails, calling on the president to tone down the rhetoric.
My hope would be that the president and his allies would cease and desist from calling the Mueller investigation a witch hunt.
The indictment sends a strong message, but legal experts say it's unlikely the Russian government will extradite military intelligence officers to the U.S. for prosecution. Lou.
Catherine, thank you very much. Catherine Herridge reporting. Rosenstein's shocking display today, his sense of timing and his overall arrogance and demonstrated incompetence on full display. Listen to these remarks, which could only be, in my opinion, categorized as blather, by the Deputy Attorney General during his press conference.
When we confront foreign interference in American elections, it's important for us to avoid thinking politically as Republicans or Democrats, and instead to think patriotically as Americans. The partisan warfare, fueled by modern technology, does not fairly reflect the grace, dignity, unity of
Rosenstein's ordinary, pious assessment coming from a man who's been compromised and conflicted and sitting idly by as the special counsel, Robert Mueller, continues to overstate his mandate, which, by the way, is hardly transparent since the Congress is still looking to find the two documents that are pertaining to the original scope, if you will, the scope memo, and the investigation of a crime. And they also adding that the president is fully aware of today's actions by the department. He had to add that. And then the White House said this, quote, "There is no allegation in this indictment that Americans knew they were corresponding with Russians." What in the world is the White House thinking? Saying there is no allegation in this indictment that any American citizen committed a crime. Really? There's no allegation that the conspiracy changed the vote count or affected any election result. Really? We've been listening to this nonsense. No evidence, no collusion. But now the White House is so caught up, and understandably so, in defending itself and this president that they have to take what is an obvious threat against the United States national security, and they turn it into a partisan discussion about who is influenced and affected by this indictment, so-called, of 12 Russian intelligence officers. Listening to this empty bluster about cyber attacks since President Obama's, well, 8 years of just pure passive nonsense, strategic patience. He did issue an executive order treating cyber attacks potentially as acts of war, but then did absolutely nothing, of course. And now Rosenstein and the special counsel have indicted 12 Russian intelligence officers. I would have loved to have heard Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, explain to us just how they're going to pursue justice. How are they going to get them here on U.S. soil for trial? And since when did the United States, when confronted with a breach of our national security, act like a bunch of cheap ambulance chasers instead of acting like the guardians of our national security that each one of these officials should be? Well, those Russians will never step foot in an American court, and Mueller knows that. So does Rosenstein, and they're playing games. Mueller's indictment in February, another example, another 13 Russian nationals linked to the Russian Internet Research Agency and broadly Russian intelligence. These defendants now accused of operating social media pages to sow discord in the U.S. political system. Sounds rather benign, doesn't it? Just a little discord. It needs being it needs corruption ripped out of it. 13 more Russians indicted in Mueller's never-ending witch hunt, and without effect. Oh, there is one effect. The President of the United States is conducting foreign policy at this very moment, and his Deputy Attorney General is upstaging him, and his White House is talking about the fact that they are not talking about implicating anyone with the Trump campaign or the Trump administration. Instead of, what in the hell are we going to do about it? Why didn't President Obama do something years ago? And by the way, the Russian interference in U.S. elections began years before 2016. Our guest now to discuss all of this, Rosenstein, his incompetence in overseeing the special counsel and its investigation. We are joined now by Chris Farrell, who is the head of research and investigations for Judicial Watch. Chris, great to have you here. You heard what I had to say about it. I am so disgusted that the national left-wing media has become a bunch of complicit, to me, inert figures in what has become a tragic play in which the national security isn't even discussed by the deputy general. So intent on playing games. I just, such reprehensible conduct by anyone in the department. And by the way, the White House, and taking this thing and acting as though it's necessary to defend the president, I think is absolutely beyond explanation or tolerance by the president.
This is a deeply subversive political attack by Rosenstein and Mueller against the president when he's in the middle of a foreign affairs event, or actually a week-long.
He's conducting foreign policy. He is
Correct.
Talking about some of the most important issues in national security, whether it be the support by all of the 29 nations for NATO, or whether it be a face-to-face, head-to-head meeting with Vladimir Putin. And you have the idiot Democrats saying they shouldn't talk to him. He only has, there are 6,500 warheads, ready to use at any moment. I mean, this is the mindlessness of this particular period in our history is overwhelming.
Rosenstein and Mueller want to destroy Trump the man and the Trump presidency. Let's be 100% clear. This is a publicity stunt.
I don't think there's no one should doubt that for a moment.
This was a publicity stunt to push back on the atrocious Strzok event yesterday, where he humiliated himself in the FBI. A little tip for me, Rosenstein, can take that House issue, can do an investigation there, because there's substantial documentation that shows there was a grave national security crime there. And point two, how do they know that the Democratic National Committee was actually ever attacked or penetrated? Because the FBI punted. They allowed CrowdStrike to do the investigation. And newsflash, CrowdStrike is not a law enforcement agency. The FBI
is also closely allied with the Democratic Party.
Correct. And the FBI was
that makes these indictments, by the way,
investigation.
Chris, it makes them based, these indictments. I mean, it's hard for me to even form the word.
They're a joke.
Basically, they're based on hearsay. They have, and I want an investigation in why the FBI did not demand access to those servers. It was not some sort of legal issue. It's a matter of national damn security.
It was political deference.
We've got a nation's capital acting like, and I'm talking about most of, nearly all of the Democratic Party and far too many of the Republicans, as if no national security issue here, as they can blithely go along with the business as usual attitude when it comes to both political corruption and outright corruption.
The same Democrats that applauded Strzok and one ridiculous member of Congress dishonored and insulted every combat wounded veteran in the country's history by suggesting he be given a Purple Heart. I mean, we're talking about a moron. I mean, how insulting can it be that this guy who threw an investigation and then tried to steer an election, that he should be honored in any way, yet the Democrats on those committees sat there and applauded him? I mean, you want to talk about a low point in the history of the House of Representatives? That was yesterday.
Yes, and it was also, as sometimes these events are wont to be, there was also on display great courage. And by the way, the Freedom Caucus stood tall, insisting on getting to the truth, and they had moments in which they succeeded.
They did, and Mr. Gohmert raised a very important point about the penetration by a hostile foreign intelligence service or entity of Hillary Clinton's server, and I'm waiting for that one to be unwound. Judicial Watch is pursuing it. I trust you. Trust me on that.
Yeah, I trust you on it, Chris. I don't think Judicial Watch can come close to serving the national security interests that right now have been absolutely betrayed by this Justice Department. And let me be very clear about that. This is a Justice Department playing political games and politicizing further a rancidly corrupt, politically corrupt Justice Department and FBI, and then the Deputy Attorney General in front of cameras and microphones having the temerity to talk to the American people about patriotism rather than partisanship. That should make everyone nauseous, sick to their stomachs at what we are tolerating in our nation's capital.
Kind of guy who engages in really subversive behavior while wrapping himself in the flag. It's disgusting.
Absolutely. Chris Farrell, as always, of Judicial Watch, thank you for being here.
Thanks,
Good to see you. Up next, Republicans challenging Dems to vote on the Dems' ridiculous movement to abolish immigration and customs enforcement. That's a bill now before the midterms. Up the left with Tammy Bruce. Stay with us. We're right back.
Shattering the glass.
Republicans demanding the pro-amnesty open border Dems vote on all immigration enforcement. The Dems apparently fear that answer vote. Well, as they've talked about it for it, it turns out that it might jeopardize their chances in November. Republicans are now for a floor vote on the position. I think they've got the Democrats on this one exactly where they want them. Tammy Bruce, columnist, president of Independent Women's Voice, and Fox Business contributor. Have you with us?
There, yeah.
What do you make of these indictments of another 12 Russians who will never see an American courtroom?
Yeah, well, that's it, isn't it? It's fascinating how we indict people that we're never going to see, we're never going to interview, we're never going to be able to expose, we're never going to get more information from. It's really freaking convenient, isn't it? And what for everyone in this country who thought that it doesn't need to be justice reform, this is an example of how far the corruption can go. And when you're at the federal level.
Has gone.
Well, has gone. And in fact, they also keep in mind with this, of course, I think being an effort to get the Strzok news off of the page one, is the fact that they all seem to be working very hard to hide something else. Because we already know a lot. And the question has to be, especially with Strzok's remarkable, bizarre performance yesterday, what are they hiding? And why is he seemingly so confident that nothing will ever happen to him?
Because he has all of that experience that nothing ever happens to the corrupt, either politically or otherwise, in the FBI or the Department of Justice. It is so corrupt that that man could actually sit there and get all so excited like a schoolboy. Mm-hmm. He couldn't stand waiting to give his pitiful, specious nonsense in response.
Well, I don't know if they thought they tried to stop him from being able to speak. Those hearings, of course, are supposed to enlighten the American people. It's taking things out it's for transparency for the sovereign, which is the citizen. And yet every effort from the Democrats was to keep that from happening. If there was any doubt before that there was something that Trump is a real thing and that they are hiding something rather large, what happened yesterday should remove that doubt from anyone who was at all suspicious.
Anybody who has a doubt now that this is a witch hunt, that this is an appalling miscarriage of justice, that this is the most corrupt Justice Department, the most corrupt FBI leadership in our country's history, will not be satisfied with any more information or even further reasoning, because they are beyond comprehension. Yeah, this is so transparently in our faces now. that there is just no help for those who haven't figured out
and
this is
what
the deal.
We've seen. This is what we've seen. You can imagine this is what we've seen despite efforts to keep most things hidden. And imagine, of course,
Whose
it's not
efforts?
just now. The FBI, the Justice Department,
Right.
the establishment in that
They've
framework.
stonewalled the United States Congress
But
for
also,
2 years.
But it's had to have been, of course, it was established for how long before that? How long have the American people not had the right justice at the federal level? This is what we need to be changing. This is why Donald Trump was elected. And this is what now we have a chance of making it happen.
That brings up the other point.
Yes.
Now, this is Donald Trump's. This is his Justice Department, and his appointees are. Now the question is, why not fix it? Because the little question that and each take of the Justice Department and security. And any idiot like Rod Rosenstein, who decides that he is a deputy attorney general, can make judgments about national security without the approval and the direction of the President of the United States, needs to get the hell out now.
Yeah. I think the American people would agree with that. And the President knows it as well.
Tammy Bruce, as always, thanks for being here.
Thank you, sir.
Great to see you. And a great job on Tucker Carlson's show the other night.
Very kind. Thank you. I had a good time doing it. The audience here is great.
You better believe it. All of Fox audiences are great.
It's a united family. I enjoy talking to them, and they love you, too.
Well, thank you very much, and we appreciate it. Tammy, good to see you. Be sure to vote in our poll tonight. Do you think an honest investigation of election meddling would have focused on the Russian threat to U.S. national security rather than on phony alleged ties to the Trump campaign? Just asking. Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs tonight. As you might be able to discern, I'm more than just a little annoyed with the corruption at the U.S. Justice Department and the FBI leadership. I'm sure that I will calm down about this, but I'm not going to change one thing about the fact that we're going to get it straightened out come hell or high water. Up next, President Trump and Queen Elizabeth meeting for a royal ceremony to cap off his extraordinary visit to the United Kingdom. We'll have the latest on the president's transformational European trip with the Dean, Ed Rollins. He's here next. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Trump meeting with British Prime Minister Theresa May. They're talking about a potential trade deal after the UK exits the European Union. President Trump touting a strong relationship with May despite a flurry of attacks from the fake news media in the UK and in the U.S.
I didn't criticize the Prime Minister. I have a lot of respect for the Prime Minister. And unfortunately, there was a story that was done, which was, generally fine, but it didn't put in what I said about the Prime Minister and tremendous things. And fortunately, we tend to record stories now, so we have it for your enjoyment if you'd like it. But we record when we deal with reporters. It's called fake news.
Joining us now, Ed Rollins, Great America PAC chairman, former Reagan White House political director, served in 3 presidential administrations, Fox political. Great to have you with us.
Thank you.
First, Theresa May and the president, that looks like a special relationship to me.
Well, they ended up on a good note, and I think they exchanged. The president let him know what he felt to both her and the NATO colleagues, and I think he walked away with a much more respect on that side of the aisle. And I think to a certain extent, he told them what they needed to do, and they'll do it.
Yeah, I think that they know, even that moronic Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, I think even he gets the point. And I think, by the way, the president may have been speaking very directly to him, at a glance. He is just such a jerk. I can't even believe it.
Well, at the end of the day, they have 28,000 potential terrorists in that country, in that city. We have, Jack Keane told me, 1,000 here that we have under guard. And I think to a certain extent, it's because of the lackluster leadership that the mayor of London has provided.
Well, anyway, luckily he's their problem, and I want to turn to this. This is one of the most just absolutely, to me, staggeringly stupid decisions ever made by anyone at Justice, and they have made a bundle of them. But this thing, Rosenstein, to take the Bob Mueller investigation, and now we've got another 12 indictments of Russian intelligence officials. Now, you can just see Vladimir Putin saying to one of his underlings, you know, we're in real trouble here. We're going to have to get some really good attorneys to defend these guys because they're going to be hauled up before American courts. I mean, how stupid does Rod Rosenstein think he and his Justice Department look? First of all, trampling on the purview of the President of the United States. National security, Rosenstein. Think about it.
Well, first of all, it took away a great trump card the president would have had. The president could have walked in and said, listen, you cannot interfere in our election. Here's evidence of you interfering in our election.
They have no evidence, Ed. Well, there's no evidence.
They have indictments.
They have hearsay, some idiotic indictments of people they cannot charge in a U.S. courtroom because they're not here.
Well, and there's no reason they couldn't have waited.
Can I ask you this?
Yes, sure.
Hitler attacks Poland, right? Can you see the Polish government saying we're going to sue you?
No.
This is an attack on U.S. sovereignty. It is to be taken seriously by serious people. But when you have flippant, not serious people and incompetent people and politically corrupt people like Rosenstein and his henchmen in the Justice Department, you end up with 12 indictments of intelligence officers serving in Russia.
On the day the president's going to visit the
by the way, it's been 3. We know that the Russians were hacking successfully Democratic servers in 14, 15, 16.
Right.
The Obama administration had known about the fact that they had been in the Democratic servers in 2016 for 7 months and didn't do a damn thing about it. Why isn't the Justice Department, why isn't the Defense Department reacting to that very open question, which is why in the hell did the President of the United States permit that?
Well, we found out 2 things yesterday. We found out that Hillary Clinton was never under real investigation in those hearings, even though we went through that grand drill. We found out today that the Justice Department, Defense Department basically are not, you know, the president needs to get back here and grab hold of these people and straighten them out. He needs to put people in there that can basically carry out his agenda, because he's doing a great job, but he's getting undercut. His whole story is being stepped on to a certain extent.
The White House today, the White House spokesman, talking like he was working for an HR department, saying, "Oh, we were not accused of anything by the special counsel or the Department of Justice." Who the hell cares? It's about national security.
Absolutely, I agree totally, and I'm appalled by it. As someone who's spent 50 years of my life in politics and White House politics, I'm just appalled at the lack of communication and the lack of.
What can the president do here with the Department of Justice, the FBI, because they are, as I said, rancidly politically corrupt?
When he finishes this trip, which is a very important trip, he has to sit down with the Attorney General and everybody else over there and say, I want this thing straightened out.
Do you think anybody could actually find the Attorney General?
Well, if I was President of the United States, I'd say to the operator, find him. I don't care where he is. Get him in here. And I'd read him the Riot Act. And I'd read the Riot Act to all of them. And I would basically say this foolishness has to stop. And we're going into an election. That's very critical to us to basically have a government that can function effectively.
Do you think McConnell and Ryan maybe could be of some help here? Where the hell are they? Who do they work? I mean, they're talking, they've sided with the Chinese on U.S. tariffs. They obviously prefer Chinese trade policy rather than American trade policy under this president.
Well, fortunately, this president has broad shoulders, and the only one who's going to carry us across the finish line here to victories is going to be him. It's not going to be Ryan. It's not going to be McConnell. And McConnell's job is to get our Senate confirmation of our nominee, and Ryan's job is to get the hell out of there as quick as possible. So,
I hope it's one that he would take seriously. And perhaps try to set a new world record in exits. But instead, it looks like it's going to be the inverse. Great to see you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Ed Rollins. Up next, the odd similarity between Peter Strzok and Rod Rosenstein's testimony before Congress. We'll show you that. This and more. Gina Loudon and Don Giordano joining us here next, right after the break. very strange similarity in the behavior, the conduct, the body language of Peter Strzok and Rod Rosenstein that has nothing to do with obstruction of justice. Please watch the body language from these two separate men as they testify. Look at this. Both Strzok and Rosenstein looking like some sort of insolent schoolboys, wiggling, squirming around in their chairs. It is just very strange, to say the very least. And the smirks, you can't buy that at any of the finest stores anywhere. Joining me now, Gina Loudon, political analyst, member of the President's Media Advisory Board, Dom Giordano, radio talk show host on Philadelphia's WPHT. Good to have you both with us. Let me start, Gina, with you. I mean, Rod Rosenstein bouncing up in a chair, Strzok sitting there. I don't know what all of that was about. These are strange folks involved at the top levels of the Justice and FBI.
Yeah. Well, Lou, as you know, I can't diagnose someone I have never seen clinically, but I would tell you that looking at them with my background in psychology and knowing that they both still work for the FBI, I hope that they are keeping up with their psychological assessments, because something is very amiss here. The energy that they have to do that, in body language terms, what that is, Lou, is that they have too much energy inside of them. They don't know what to do. They can't throw their hands up in the air and panic, right? They can't run out of the room. So there's just energy boiling over in them, probably from nervousness or something that they may be hiding, and that's why you see all these bizarre jerks and gestures.
Maybe that's why they put spies in the Trump campaign, Dom, to give them another outlet.
Yeah. Well, Lou, you know Gina's background in psychology, mine's education. If I had Strzok in front of me in a classroom, it's not extra energy. This guy's smirk is just smugness, arrogance. Yeah. Not just toward Trump, but toward the American people. That's what he was bubbling over with. That's what he couldn't wait to get into it with these congresspeople.
Let me turn to, this is one for you to analyze, Gina. Chuck Schumer says the president should cancel his meeting. Let's take a look at this quote from Schumer. Suddenly the talking points, the overriding talking point of the Democrats, this quote from Schumer. President Trump should cancel his meeting with Vladimir Putin until Russia takes demonstrable and transparent steps to prove that we won't interfere in future, that they won't interfere in future elections. Glad handing with Vladimir Putin on the heels of these indictments would be an insult to our democracy. Well, you know, all of the arrogance isn't reserved for the Justice Department and the FBI leadership, is it?
No, sir. The insult to our democracy, and that's, by the way, a Republican democracy. But anyway, the insult to our democratic republic right now is what happened today with Rosenstein, exactly as you have pointed out your entire show. And you know what, Lou, your anger is very righteous. You have millions of Americans behind you who see that this is a threat to our national security. And if this wasn't discussed with our president beforehand, which I can't imagine it was when he's getting ready for this meeting with Putin, then I can't see how this isn't tantamount to treason. We'll have to watch and see. And I certainly don't know all the policies and procedures, but that's the only thing that makes sense to me. This doesn't look like that this was handled well at all, and I think Rosenstein needs to be fired, and perhaps worse. That's the insult to our democracy.
Dom, your thoughts? You get the last word.
Lou, the timing of this, I mean, to Gina's point, the timing of it, to do it today and then to have this, it takes away Strzok from the front page, but it also puts the president in this position with Putin where he can't go in fresh and go after him on these things. It weakens him, it diminishes him, and then all they have is to say, don't meet with him. The timing is incredibly suspect.
Yeah, suspect, and it is also, everyone's ignoring the last administration. Obama's administration at least recognized they were passive as always on everything, did nothing, but at least they put in writing the expression that the United States could interpret a cyber attack as an act of war and respond accordingly. You know, something needs to be said well beyond this. We've reached this point where everybody thinks it's about putting together a phrase or what the president says or what some official says. Action counts, and luckily we have a president who is a man of action. Gina, great to have you with us. Good to see you.
Great to be
Tom,
with
good
you,
to
Lou.
see you. Thanks for being here.
Thank
both
you,
of
Lou.
We appreciate it very much. Up next, Rhino Mitch McConnell trying to, this is for real, to undermine the president's tough stance on trade deficits and the mercantilist, aggressive, expansionary policies of China. What is the deal with McConnell? We'll bring you the latest here next. Also, be sure to tune in to Hannity on the Fox News Channel, 9 p.m. Eastern tonight. I'll be a guest of the great Sean Hannity. Please join us. More right after the break. Stay with us. We're coming right back. The Rhino Republican congressional leadership doing the bidding of communist China in their efforts to fight the president on tariff policies. Just today, Majority Leader of the Senate, Mitch McConnell, fear-mongering about the possibilities of a trade war. He said this, quote, "I'm concerned about getting into a trade war, and it seems like we may actually be in the early stages of it. Nobody wins a trade war, and so it would be good if it ended soon." Wow, that's deep. He didn't mention the fact this country has run trade deficits for 43 straight years. And by the way, McConnell was echoing Paul Ryan's comments Thursday when he claimed new tariffs aren't the solution, not the solution to economic growth. I don't think anybody said it was. What it is the solution to are trade deficits that are crushing this country. Both statements just days after the Chinese government urged U.S. companies to lobby the American government against the president's trade tariffs. At least Ryan and McConnell were listening to one leader. It just happened to be Xi Jinping rather than Donald Trump. On Wall Street today, stocks closed higher. That's right, more trade tensions. This is the most ridiculous reporting by business journalists in this country in I don't know how many years. The Dow up 96 points today. The S&P up 3. The Nasdaq up 2. Volume on the big board, 2.6 billion shares. The Dow gaining over 2% on the week. You may have noticed before that slide change that the Dow is now above 25,000. The S&P gained 1.5%. The Nasdaq up nearly 2%. A reminder, listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast on the Salem Radio Network. Up next, Pastor Robert Jeffress. We are going to talk religion, and we're going to talk straight. Stay with us. We'll be right back. The Rhino Republican congressional leadership doing the bidding of communist China in their efforts to fight the president on tariff policies. Just today, Majority Leader of the Senate, Mitch McConnell, fear-mongering about the possibilities of a trade war. He said this, quote, "I'm concerned about getting into a trade war, and it seems like we may actually be in the early stages of it. Nobody wins a trade war, and so it would be good if it ended soon." Wow, that's deep. He didn't mention the fact this country has run trade deficits for 43 straight years. And by the way, McConnell was echoing Paul Ryan's comments Thursday when he claimed new tariffs aren't the solution, not the solution to economic growth. I don't think anybody said it was. What it is the solution to are trade deficits that are crushing this country. Both statements just days after the Chinese government urged U.S. companies to lobby the American government against the president's trade tariffs. At least Ryan and McConnell were listening to one leader. It just happened to be Xi Jinping rather than Donald Trump. On Wall Street today, stocks closed higher. That's right, more trade tensions. This is the most ridiculous reporting by business journalists in this country in I don't know how many years. The Dow up 96 points today. The S&P up 3. The Nasdaq up 2. Volume on the big board, 2.6 billion shares. The Dow gaining over 2% on the week. You may have noticed before that slide change.